This episode features strong drinks as well as strong language.
My approach to writing tasting notes has always been 3-point. I want to tell you what the wine is, where it comes from, what you'll experience, and what you can do with it. Because I think that's what people want to know. If you don't do that in a wine tasting note, you're doing your customers dirty.
Welcome to Modo di Bere, the podcast about local drinks and local sayings. I'm your host, Rose Thomas Bannister. Today, I'm so pleased to welcome to the show Michele Thomas.
No relation.
Michele Thomas, yes. Yeah, I mean, Thomas is my middle name, but yes, we do have that in common. Michele is a writer, writing instructor, and the longtime manager of Brooklyn's Green Grape Wine Shop. She has an MFA in creative writing from St. Joseph's College, where she's also now an instructor. She had attended and previously worked for many years with the wine program at the International Culinary Center. Before I met Michele, I fell in love with her tasting notes, the written descriptions of the wines that she had put up around the shop. And we enjoyed tasting together for many years when I was working as a wine rep. And I'm so pleased to have her on the show today to talk about writing and drinks and writing about drinks and how it all goes together with the language piece. Michele, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
If you want to read some of Michele's published works, you can look for The Christmas Wreath, which was published in The New Yorker. Michele, what are you working on writing now?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on a memoir in linked essays about my experience with food, wine, and family. Those are the through lines of my life, and so those are going to be the through lines of my memoir. I volunteer as on the jury for the Fordham University Many Voices Prize, which is a writing prize for first-generation college students. I am still working with the Fulton Street Fellowship, which is a small group founded by local people to help get Black people into the wine industry.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your work.
Yeah.
Before we jump to the interview, I want to let everyone know that this is a listener-supported program. So please take a moment, pause the interview. We'll be here when you get back. Go to patreon.com/Modo di Bere and sign up to join the community, become one of the supporters, make sure that this awesome show gets to continue. So thank you very much to everybody who is a subscriber. You are keeping this ship afloat. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got local drinks, we've got local sayings, and then we've got the local wine shop. So I just have a lot of thoughts about the neighborhood wine shop and how it functions as a part of the neighborhood. Do you have any thoughts about that or stories from your time as the local wine shop?
Yeah, I love being at a local wine shop. It occupies a really beautiful place in sort of a neighborhood ecosystem between like your home and your local bar. But your wine shop is someplace in between. Like you can grab your drinks to go, but also you come in, you talk to people that you know. I have great customers that I've seen their kids grow up. And having seen them come in for years when they were like, 10, 11. Now they're 20, 21, and I've sold them their first bottle of wine.
Wow, that's so amazing.
I actually had someone come in. He had his little under 21 license cut up and he made earrings out of it, and he came in and I proudly sold him his first bottle of wine on his 21st birthday. And those experiences are really special. You get to be part of people's families. I usually send my customers, I'll send them a bottle of bubbly when they have a marriage or they get married or they have a baby or just, marking life's events. Because, that's what you want wine to do anyway. You want it to be part of your life. And so I think I just love that experience.
So in terms of bringing new drinkers into wine, let's talk about tasting notes, because I love your tasting notes. I love your descriptions.
Oh, thank you.
There were all these like little cards around the green grape on the bottles of wine. And I remember coming to the store early on and saying, who is writing these? Because these are really great. I know people have a lot of feelings about tasting notes. And I think that when it can be something that feels like a obscure or a prescription and like, if you don't taste this, you're wrong. And some people have kind of moved away from the more descriptive tasting notes to talk about supposedly more objective things like structure or winemaking, but I still love them. Tasting notes like yours.
I love them.
How do you feel about that?
I'll start with, what I've always seen as a peeve and something that I feel like kept me out of wine for a long time before I became familiar with it through, education, was that you go to a store and you're overwhelmed by either no descriptions or things that are talking about things that, you don't know. Like the average person has no idea what 3-day cold soaked maceration. Nobody knows what that means. My approach to writing tasting notes has always been 3-point. I want to tell you what the wine is, where it comes from, what you'll experience, and what you can do with it. Because I think that's what people want to know. If you don't do that in a wine tasting note, you're doing your customers dirty.
Yeah, yeah. Could you, off the top of your head, give us an example, even if you're making it up now?
One that comes to mind pretty frequently is the Frecciarossa Pinot Grigio, and they have a beautiful Pinot Nero that we carry. I had got a chance to meet the winemaker recently, and she was so lovely. And she told us this story about how Alfred Hitchcock loved her grandpa's wines. And he tried them in a restaurant and became so enamored with them. He found out who made the wine and then promptly either traveled to Italy himself or sent someone back to pick up the wine every year for about 10 years.
Wow.
And that story stuck with me because what an amazing piece of history to have with that. Alfred Hitchcock liked your family's wines. That's amazing,
Yeah.
Another one I tend to think about is Marina Marcarino of Ponset Winery. She makes these beautiful organic and biodynamic Barbarestos in Piemonte, and she was the first person to do it, and definitely the first woman to do it. And everybody thought she was bonkers. She was just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to convert my family's wineries. And all the neighbors thought she was nuts. She did it. And her wines are gorgeous. And
she was right.
She was right. She's teaching in a local university. And she got kids out of kindergarten for being like a little bit of a badass. Like someone who's just like, I'm going to do things my own way. And I think that really carries into her wine as well.
They're great.
Yeah.
I love this wine.
Those are gorgeous wines.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I've always had this thought because I'm a writer too. I remember when I first got into wine, I just remember thinking to myself, learning how to describe how something tastes and smells and makes you feel. This is going to make me a better writer. Yeah. Even not writing about the wine, just tasting the wine. It's kind of like writing about music. It's hard. I remember when I was a concert promoter, which I still do, but I had like a house concert venue. I would promote the artists and they just would have nothing online about what their music sounded like.
Yeah.
How do I tell the fans of my venue what this band sounds like? It's actually hard to describe well what music sounds like. It kind of made me think of writing about wine.
I think that's 100% true. I always call it fun with adjectives. And in fact, I've always wanted to teach a writing class or teach a group of writing teachers about wine because it's fun with adjectives.
That is a great idea. Oh my God, let's do that together.
Let's do it, right? It would be so much fun.
That would be awesome.
But it is really hard because we're always told that wine is subjective. And it is. It absolutely is subjective. But there are feelings that come to the front. And there are high notes and low notes. And some of it is free association with what it makes you think of. And for the most part, the wines that I've tasted and sampled and talking with winemakers, you're pretty close. Mm-hmm. So the winemakers put their heart and their soul into their projects, and they want you to taste that. And when you talk to them about it and you share some of those things, they're like, yes, that's what I wanted. So it is difficult to do, but I really put my heart into doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, your tasting notes are amazing. Do you have the tasting notes up on the Green Grape website?
Yeah, they're actually all on greengrapewine.com.
And do you guys ship?
We do. We ship all locally throughout New York State. It's a little bit trickier in many other states because New York beverage law, well, actually U.S. beverage law is kind of funky. Mm-hmm. But we can certainly ship to like Connecticut, California, Florida, D.C. And we also have a link on our website that will show you exactly where we can ship.
Okay, great. Well, whether you want to order some wine from Michelle's awesome shop where she works or not, you can go to...
It's green with an E at the end, so greengrapewine.com is our wine store specific website. Greengrape.com will get you to our company website. I also make a point of writing about each producer too. So not just the wine notes, but who are the producers? We want to make sure that our customers know that each wine is researched. We want to know about their labor practices, what makes them special, how do they approach it, where are they? So take a look.
I think maybe the place where people just started blowing off tasting notes altogether was as a reaction or a swing away from the heyday of a wine critic with a score. Yeah. I would hope that even when that was more of the model, that was there as like a consumer service and not as like, I am the authority. And if you don't taste what I think, fuck you.
I mean, I definitely think that is part of the reaction to it. Those stores blew up and people used them as a way to pick the wines that they thought were the best, but they were the best according to one person.
Mm-hmm. It's Robert Parker.
Yeah. There's documentaries about it. Look them up, Robert Parker. I think also moving away from those tasting notes was a rejection of the conventional idea of what a sommelier is or does. It's someone who walks around in a restaurant in a 3-piece suit, very buttoned up, and they have like a doodad around their neck and they taste wine. They tell you that this is the wine that you want to have with your tacos, your $400 tacos. This is the only wine you can have with it. If you don't like it, there's something wrong with you. I think people rejected that and were intimidated by it. And
I think it was designed to be intimidating.
Yeah.
The right intention of all of that was, and still is, because I still think that's an important role, is to
absolutely
increase enjoyment of a customer. I want you to have a good time.
Right.
I want you to enjoy your food. I want you to enjoy your wine. I want you to have a good night.
Yeah.
And I'm here in service of you.
Yeah.
But I think as far as the intimidation factor, anything's about power. I know about this fancy thing. And, it's hard. I mean, they make wine all over the world.
It is legitimately hard. There's multiple languages. There's rules in different parts of the world. There's histories. There's geography. Like, pick a subject. It's thrown at you, in wine. And I think that's true, that the role is designed to help people have a better experience when they pick wine, or make it easier for them to choose wine, because wine is the world. It's overwhelming and huge. Like most things, there's an edge where it can start to tip into unapproachable, and people can sort of take advantage of the idea that I am very powerful. I have lots of money, so I'm going to buy this expensive thing that I don't even like and make you drink it. Like, and I think that over time, especially like moving out of I think I would honestly say out of the late 90s and into the early 2000s, people started to reject that idea. They wanted it to be a little bit more casual. They wanted it to be a little bit more approachable. We saw this with the way with the rise of the chef, the rise of like moving away from sort of the uber French, very militaristic style chef who yelled at you all the time, to the rock and roll chef with an arm full of tattoos. I think this is a very similar movement.
Yeah.
I really believe that to be the case.
Did wine get there, though? Because you're making me think of a Food Network moment where suddenly everybody knows what Wagyu beef is and all this stuff. I think it changed the way that people cooked and the way that people dined. Do you think we fully reached that moment with wine?
I think we're still struggling with that. I think it's on the path. I think that we're going to get there. I just don't know that we're there yet.
What's going to get us there?
I think a few more years of really making wine accessible and making wine diverse. Diverse is the people who drink it. People around the world, people in every culture, black, white, green, yellow, queer, not queer. Everybody likes wine. Everybody likes to drink something, and they like to eat. Making sure that we can have wine producers on the market that reflect those people, and making sure that we have wines that can address those foods. I think that will go a long, long way.
Yeah.
Where like not everybody wants to eat steak au poivre. Like if you want to have jerk chicken wings, which I just had last night, they were delicious.
What do you drink with it?
Oh my God. I had this really lovely Italian orange Moscato, not Moscato. It was a Gewürztraminer. It was lovely. It was a little bit funky, but it had these really beautiful tropical fruit notes that just popped up with that jerk chicken spice.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing.
So like, we need to tell people that you can do that.
Yeah.
And then I think it'll help really go a long way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I salute you and your work with education and everything. I've been feeling this in my heart for years.
Of course.
It has to diversify or wither on the vine. Thank you for coming on the show. Frankly, there aren't that many Black people in the wine industry, and y'all are busy.
Really?
Is there a lot of demands on your time? How do you manage that?
I think that's true. I think that as historically underrepresented, Black people and generally people of color or any people in a minority position feel the need and are urged to do more, right? To do as much as they possibly can to keep up with average Joe who makes $2 more than you do, right? So I think that there is a drive to almost overcommit ourselves and to do so much because we want to do so much. And I know I want to do so much.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just want to lay in my bed because I'm so tired.
Yeah.
So all of those things are true at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think it's true. There are still the numbers of Black people in the wine industry and people of color generally are awful. It's less than 2% of all working wine professionals in the United States. That's bananas.
It is bananas. It is absolutely bananas.
Yeah, it's getting better,
and it's a
very
problem.
slowly.
It's a problem in retail too. I live in a historically Black neighborhood, and the Green Grape stands out as a place where you're actually going to see those faces when you walk in.
I mean, that's intentional too. Like, part of it is being a woman of color in that industry. I want to show that, hey, it's accessible to you. And I see it in my customers. Some of my Black or brown customers come in, they feel a little bit more at ease because I'm not going to make them feel weird or dumb. And with my staff, I'm like, if you're interested, I don't care where you're starting. I will do my best to teach you and bring you into it and like help hopefully infect you with some of the same geeky excitement that I feel about wine and food. And you can see that, people respond to it. They love being given opportunity. And, and I've told people who worked for me too, like, even if wine isn't your passion and you don't want to go into this as a full-time business, whatever you learn in wine, you can take with you anywhere. You can take learning how to describe something. You can take sales skills. You can take talking to people, coming out of your shell, those presentation skills that you have, and just an openness to try something new. That is necessary in everything. Everything. Otherwise, you're just a bum. Like, it's not cool. You're not cool. The wine business is an industry that nobody, like, very, very people understand how wine works.
Yeah, there's like this cachet and that's about it. It's the wine itself and the stories and the flavors. It's absolutely like learning a language. So I can understand why just feel like a lot coming in. But as you learn, I mean, for me, and this is what I always say with my work as an educator with the show, the purpose is to increase enjoyment. The purpose of greater increased knowledge is increased enjoyment. I'm here to communicate, not to show off.
Right.
And that, I think, is where I hope we can all head together.
That's exactly what it should be. I think that's why we've always bonded about it, because that's what we want to do.
And the wine communicates.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, is no other food product in the world that I can think about. You can be like, okay, maybe cheese.
Maybe cheese.
Right. But just the way that it tells the story about the land and a place and the human natural connection and the weather in the year and the way that it's kind of this like geologic record. It blew my mind. I couldn't stop messing with it. It became so much more than a day job for me. And that moment when you open up the wine list at the restaurant instead of being like, do you have a Cabernet?
Yeah.
And getting from there to, oh, I know this. Oh my God, my friend that I'm eating with is going to love this. And they're like, oh, she's going to order for us. And then, you taste it and you're like, okay, I know how to tell if this is flawed or not. And I'm not nervous about this little ritual of the, right. But and then we're all drinking the bottle and everyone's like, oh my God, this is great.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm a wine picker-outer. I figured it out. Even this use of the word master with a lot of these programs, no one could master it.
Right.
It changes every year.
Every year.
Every single wine from everywhere in the world, unless it's like absolutely chemically modified so that it doesn't change every year. But if you're the small family farms that like I really am passionate about, and you're working in harmony with the earth, then that's why we need wine writers, I think, to help us keep track of, I don't know, even though I guess I'm making a case for vintage notes, but that's not even really that useful. How do you feel about vintage? I want to know what happened, but right. I think they became like a way to damn an entire region for the whole vintage.
I think that's right. I think that with anything, anytime you make a generalization, you run a risk of losing bits of nuance, right? That's always a risk. But I think that vintage notes are useful in giving you like a general idea, a very general idea. They need to know that maybe the wine from 2018 is not going to be quite the same as from 2020 and a little bit of why. That's really helpful to know. We can make vintage notes more accessible for average consumers. And then for nerds like us, we can go deeper.
Yeah.
And then we want to be like, okay, why was this vintage so challenging for this, that, and the other person, or this, that, and the other region, or like maybe this sub-region really had a hard time, but the guys down the road, great vintage, right?
Right.
So,
I think it's just so much more complicated than good vintage, bad vintage.
Yeah.
Although I feel like great vintage is kind of one of those things that everyone knows to say about wine, like gymnastics, stick the landing, right? And it's like, actually, I mean, I like to challenging vintage. You know, it's not like, oh, bad vintage. I mean, maybe in the past, I don't know, but winemakers have been working so hard and learning so much science, and a good winemaker can make something great.
Yeah.
They just might not have very much
exactly.
to sell, but then you need to know, like, why is it more expensive this year?
Exactly why.
Their production was down, you know. I want so much for there to, I feel like things have gone so sour, and numbers are reflecting that. There's all these studies coming out of people drinking less wine, and it's a little bit of schadenfreude. I'm like, okay, I told you to be less snobby, and you didn't listen to me.
And there you have it.
But of course, like, I want this amazing product to succeed. So I worked in retail too, kind of bopped around in different parts of the industry before I started Modo di Bere. I always felt that this was so sad, but was the reality that it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
When people come into a wine shop, they expect to be made to feel bad.
Yeah.
My thought about how to make things more accessible, if you're just not an asshole, you're already ahead.
It goes so far just not being a jerk when someone walks in. Just say hi. It starts with a hello. Yeah. How you doing? Like, you could just go straight there. And I think that's 100% right. And just going back to your point about, I think, why we need wine writers, it made me think of the piece that Taryn McNeil wrote recently, which was excellent. And you should go read it. Her name's Taryn McNeil. She's written the Wine Bible. She's brilliant. She talks about the loss of the wine writer and feeling a little bit disturbed because there's no place for it anymore. I mean, I'm paraphrasing deeply, but...
Yeah. She's a great wine writer.
She's a great wine writer.
I love the Wine Bible. And it's one of my favorite wine texts because she really makes the story come to life. I mean, there's things that she says about how to taste that everybody uses.
Yeah.
I don't know if she came up with it, but learning about body through thinking about skim milk versus cream.
Exactly.
Learning about tannin. But she doesn't just say tannin is this or that. She says, you make a cup of tea, your friend calls you to tell her about her divorce, and then your tea is oversteeped, and that's tannin.
Yeah.
Or she's like, oh, Syrah's like cowboy boots.
Yeah.
You know? Like, and I remember that stuff.
I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I do see that we have lost some wine writers or lost places. Or I guess I should say the more
journalism
obvious
in general is...
Generally. But the flip side of that is that there's still places to write about wine. We just have to maybe change our idea of who a wine writer is and where they write. So maybe there's not a column in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal anymore. There should be.
Yeah.
But if it's not there, go on to Instagram. Go on to YouTube.
Yeah.
I write about wine a lot on Instagram. Stuy Somm on Instagram. Bed, Bed, Stuy Somm on Instagram. That's where I write a lot about wine and culture, and you can find those types of wine writers. And I think that's where wine writing is going. It's going to maybe be smaller segments, much more, not necessarily bottle reviews, but much more like experiential reviews, or talking about who they met and how they enjoyed the wine, less than, well, this wine was created by magical fairies and pulled on a truck of unicorns before it was cold sold macerated for 6 hours, making it just much less obtuse and more real and more on the ground. I can't remember who said it. I want to say it was Dorothy Gator, who used to work for the Wall Street Journal, said wine is a grocery. In Europe, wine is a grocery, and it should be. And I like that idea.
You mean like a grocery item?
It's a grocery item.
Yeah.
It's not something that you need to save for special occasion. It can be.
It's daily bread.
It's daily bread.
Yeah.
You can have daily bread, but you can also have really great specialty bread. So I think once we start treating wine like that, we'll be on the right way, the right path.
It's so hard in the United States, though, because wine at the grocery store here is it's made by like 5 companies.
Yeah.
And the wine that you get if you're in New York, if you're in Chicago, or, you have to visit go and visit the specialty shop. And that's the way that I always encourage people. It literally makes no sense that you can't buy wine at the grocery shop here. But if you could, then this amazing, thriving culture of independent wine shops would just wither and die because everyone would just get it all at Whole Foods. Don't make that a law, people. I know it's counterintuitive, but that's one weird prohibition era rule that in New York City you can't buy wine at the grocery store that has accidentally led to this amazing local wine culture that brings winemakers from all over the world to come and be part of this cool education stuff. I want that to be found throughout the country.
Even in New York, we have to have a specialty shop for that. So I just want people to treat wine like a grocery item. To go back to like wine and grocery shops, it is counterintuitive, but I don't know. If anything, I want the 5 companies who have these major stores to bring in the independent winemakers. I don't care where we sell wine, as long as we have access to the great stuff, great products from a multitude of makers, because people are making wine everywhere, so people everywhere should enjoy it. It just gets harder when, if you're at, I don't know, a Wegmans or a Walmart or Whole Foods, they're not going to... Whole Foods is almost a bad example because they dedicate their work towards independent small producers.
No.
Natural
that's
producers.
True. That's true.
But if we're going more for like Walmart or Target or whatever other big mega store they're in.
Or, I mean, I'm talking more about like distribution and the way that it works in the rest of in most of the country. Like, listen, I want to just say right here, like, I don't want to make anybody who's drinking Yellowtail like feel bad.
Oh.
The experience that I had was just, we were talking about small farm versus like big conglomerate with lots of additives.
Yeah.
Anything you see in quantity to be found at stores like all over the United States, just the way that viticulture works is just going to be kind of like the difference between like wine and a Coke. I like Coke. You know what I mean? It's just tough though, because people just aren't exposed to this stuff too.
Right.
I've been to my mom's wine store in rural Illinois. Everything is like from like a huge company.
I think that's
farmers.
right.
I'm kind of rambling right now.
But I'm with you. I'm with you on the ramble, and I'm with you. Like it's such a complicated problem that we have here in this country with as far as wine and access to wine and wine distribution and also wine marketing. It's one of the reasons why everybody has like those same 3 brands of wine is because that's the wine being marketed. So maybe if there was another way for wine to be marketed, more people would have access to it, or more people would know to request the wine. Honestly, if you were in Joe Bob's like big mega store, wherever Joe Bob lives, maybe he lives in Cincinnati, and more people requested Punset Wines or Hobo Wine Company wines, which is really small, literally mom and pop made wine, but excellent stuff, they would sell it.
Yeah.
So it's super complicated. I feel like we're going to need to keep picking away at this problem for at least another 10 years to try to break it down. But it's really sticky. And I think that's where the work of a retailer comes in, because sorry, now it's my turn to ramble.
Do it.
People will go out to eat in a restaurant and they'll have a great night and they'll try a great wine, and then they will go to their retailer and they go, I had the most amazing wine on my dad's, 50th birthday party, whatever. They can't find it at a retail shop. So what position does that leave them at? They're only trying to they want to recreate that experience, and they can't go to the restaurant every day. That's where, as a retailer, your work can be to find wines that are going to be kind of like that, wines that are really special, wines that bring something exciting to the person who consumes them, wines that have a great story. And then they can have that really special experience with a wine that they spent, $20 on a Tuesday. And then you're like, oh my God, then they come back the next day and like, oh, that wine was great. And you're like, yeah, absolutely, that wine's great. And you feel great about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at this point in the show, I just want to say real quick that you should be following Modo di Bere on YouTube and Instagram. If you like the podcast and you're a fan of the podcast, there's also some other content there that you're missing out on in terms of what Michelle's talking about where the wine writer is. Check out the whole platform. Go to my website, mododibere.com, sign up for my newsletter, Instagram, YouTube, get in there and follow, subscribe, keep up with all the adventures and see cool clips of me and Michele and everybody else that I'm talking to. So get in there, guys, and follow Michele. And Michele, you talk about on your Instagram account, you do some wine writing, but you also write a lot about cocktails and you call it the shift drink.
Yes.
Can you explain for our listeners what a shift drink is?
Yes. So a shift drink is a time-honored tradition in the hospitality world where after a long day of serving your customers, whether you're at a bar or a restaurant, the staff, after the last table is gone, the last people are gone, you lock the doors, and there's a chance for those staff to just sort of take a breath and enjoy something for themselves that they don't have to share with anybody, that they don't have to give with anybody, they don't have to pretend to be anyone else. They don't have to put anyone else's needs first for just that drink or that last couple moments. And that's where the idea of the shift drink comes from. And so what I like to do is recreate that idea for just an everyday person. Like when you're done with work, when I'm done with work, and I work in hospitality, I worked in retail, but I still think of myself as a hospitality person. I want to go home and I want to have that breath, that cocktail that's just something that's interesting and something that goes with whatever I'm experiencing in my life at that moment, whether it's a subway commute or a really cool TV show or whatever.
What's one of your recent cocktails that you've made for yourself at home that you're like, oh, that was a good one?
Well, one that I haven't put it up yet, but I'm really experimenting with it, is something really simple. It is Cynar, tonic, and a lime. Cynar and tonic and a lime.
Oh, that sounds great.
It's so good. And it almost gives you like a little bit of Coke vibes as someone who loves Coke and Diet Coke specifically.
Diet Coke is magic medicine.
It is magical. It gives you a little bit of that, but it also gives you like a little bit of buzz, which is lovely. And I can pour that and sit on the couch with my popcorn. It goes straight with popcorn, actually. And just like, decompress.
Oh my God, that's a great pairing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Michele, speaking of getting into wine, how did you get into wine? How did you end up at the International Culinary Center?
Oh man, so this is a funny story. I worked in children's publishing right after college. I studied journalism and I was like, I'm going to go and be a reporter. And then I was a reporter and I'm like, I don't like this. So I ended up in children's books and I'd worked there for a long time and got a little burnt out. And
You wrote a couple children's books also.
I did, yes. I wrote books for middle graders, Science and Oxygen and Science and Sodium. So they're very, very high-tech books. But I got a little burnt out and I wanted to start writing about something I've always loved, which is food. It was such a big part of my life. So I found this job posting and I'm like, I don't know. If I can write about, if I can teach second graders how light works, I figure I can help teach, adult students how to fry an egg. So I interviewed and I really didn't think I had the job at all. I was like so nervous. I was in this beautiful, like renowned school. It was Bobby Flay's alma mater. It was like surrounded by chefs. I was the one intimidated.
And the job was as a writer?
The job was as a writer to edit the schools. They had proprietary textbooks. I threw my hat in the ring and I'll never forget, I was in an interview with Chef Nils Naren, who was the chef of Aquavit. Great chef, amazing guy. Super, super intimidating to look at. And he asked me what I like to cook. And I looked him dead in the face. And I said, fried chicken. And he looked at me and he said, And I was like, that's it. I've bombed this interview. And I left. And then 2 days later, I got a call. They were like, oh, yeah, you're hired. And I was like, what? Long story short, that's how I got into the International Culinary Center. And I got into wine specifically because the school was bringing on a wine program. And they hired an amazing master sommelier, Scott Carney, to head up that program. And so it was my job to put together the content. And Scott Carney, who I'm telling you, this man is a G. He is amazing. He's worked at Gramercy Tavern. He knows everybody. He's just genius. But he's so kind and so compassionate. And when he's talking to me about wine lessons to include in the curriculum, he got me excited. He told me stories. He told me about fruits and vegetables. And then after work, we would go get tequila. It was great. And so I eventually took a class with him and I was hooked. I was bitten. And And that's how I got into wine. And I'm like, I haven't looked back since.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It's a great world to be in, great space to be in. Andre Mack is another winemaker who I love and respect, and he also lives in Brooklyn. He's an amazing guy. Worked at Per Se, has many restaurants. He has a show on Bon Appetit. But he said something really interesting to me once. He said, most people in wine, whether you're in wine sales, wine writing, wine business, we've had a couple of lives already. We've tried a couple of different things, and we all fall into wine. Like very few people wake up one day and go, "Oh, I'm going to get into wine." At least in this country, people fall into it. They are doing another thing. One guy produced music videos.
Yeah.
And was like, "Oh, this is what? Wine's amazing."
Yeah. I'm there in that story.
Exactly. You're there in that story. So I think that shows that wine is a world and a business for curious people. And the more curious people we have in the world, the better the world is generally.
I love that.
I said what I said.
So you can cook fried chicken for me anytime. What are we drinking with that fried chicken?
Oh, man. Bubbles.
Yeah.
You can always drink bubbles.
Which
bubbles.
one? Which style?
Which style? Oh, I like champagne or Cremant. Champagne if I'm a fancy girl. I've been obsessed with B. Stuyvesant champagne for years, not just because it's delicious, but because she's a Black woman producer. She lives in Brooklyn. She's from Brooklyn. She's awesome. Really, really cool lady, and her wines are excellent. Or the other end of that would be Pierre Richard. They have a beautiful Cremant de Jura, 100% Chardonnay, and it's everything you want. It's so tasty. You just you open it, and it's like less than $30 too.
Yeah.
It's great. It transports you to Jura. You're in the hills. You're in the mountains. It's fresh. It's pretty. It's mineral. It's golden apples, and it just pops along something like that.
And why does it work so well with the fried chicken?
Texture. Right? Bubbles are great because they have texture, and they will, work with the snap, crackle, pop of a good fried chicken. And those soft apple and floral notes really marry well with whatever spice seasoning you have on a fried chicken. I like to add paprika to mine. And so it makes those spice notes really pop. They sort of play off of some of the barrel notes and the fruit. It's just great. It's just so good.
All right, ladies, gentlemen, everybody, I think you can see why I had Michele on the show to talk about how to talk about flavor.
I'm hungry now.
Yeah. Oh my God. Isn't that the worst? So Michele, knowing your story about having started in the Culinary Center, which to me, I'm like, oh, wow. Really? I'm like, oh, wow, fancy. When you let me read your gingerbread story, I think of this. Would you mind reading for us the gingerbread story?
Oh my God. I am so honored to read it. Yeah, this is great.
So what we're going to do, people, is Michele's going to read this story, and we're going to excerpt it here because it's a little long for the interview maybe. And if you want to hear the rest, then there's going to be a bonus episode and you'll be able to hear the whole thing. Get excited. All right, Michele, go ahead.
One thing I like about this story is that it kind of brings together my experience as, a kid growing up in New York with my experience working at the Culinary Center. And I worked with amazing chefs. Once I did get the job, I worked with these amazing chefs who are a collection of wonderfully talented, goofy nerds, right? They love to play and create and cuss, and they're just a lot of them are still my dear friends to this day. The gingerbread, just for a little bit of context, is something that I grew up with as a kid. My mom made these gingerbread houses. She planned them about 6 months out and constructed them over the course of a week, and then invited neighborhood kids over to our house to destroy the gingerbread house. And it was 100% edible. That was the only rule. She'd always put hours into this construction process and then just have it torn apart by amazing little kids.
What were they like?
Oh my God. Some of them were Tudor style, houses with white peppermint cones for what do you call those things?
Columns?
Columns, yeah.
Oh my God, columns.
Columns, yeah.
A gingerbread house with columns.
Gingerbread house with columns. She did a whole town one year, so a bunch of little houses. We made Santa's Workshop. We made a toy shop. So she made these little, like, basically little toys out of gingerbread and candy. Some of them were like sculpted out of chocolate. Yeah, it's like, so they were a range of things. And every year was something, a chance to do something more creative. I'm going to read you this story. It's called Under Construction. Fucking gingerbread, Chef Jurgen said, jacked open and sweaty after teaching classic pastry arts for 6 hours. His pale skin and uniform almost blending into one of the long white tables in the chef's office where he sat, sketching. Colored pencils and his mop of black hair were all that set the associate director of the pastry department apart from his surroundings. What's cooking? I asked him moments earlier, entering the office and passing along the other side to the table towards the printer. Since joining the International Culinary Center's education department, I adopted this as my customary greeting for the chefs. Chef Xavier, also sweaty but from the culinary department, glared impatiently from the computer station at the other side of the office. He'd swept into my office moments earlier, smelling like salted chicken, to tell me that the printer was jammed. Again. Like Jurgen, he was in the middle of a double teaching shift, which meant that he had about a 90-minute break between classes. He needed to print a handout for his class, and he needed time for a few cigarettes outside. There was no time to wait for the IT department. I'm not IT, I told him. I always told them that. But you know the computer, he said. I don't know this shit. Yes, chef. I opened a few panels and cleared the errant paper. Squeaks and whirring gears told me that Xavier would be happy again. Okay, he said with a smile and a clap of his hands. He rolled his body toward the printer to wait for his papers. I turned to go back to my own work, but the soft browns and reds and greens of Jurgen's drawing stopped me. I sat down beside him, my body suddenly heavy. I wouldn't be able to avoid Christmas with its jingling bells, snowy rom-coms, and warmly pictured family gatherings for much longer. I'd have to figure out something to say when asked about my holiday plans. Roasting chicken I would eat alone didn't sound so festive. Neither did saying I was estranged from my father and sister and have been since my mother died. Gingerbread houses always make me think of my mother. Christmas always made me think of the family I used to be close to. Almost everyone in the pastry department could draw, but Jurgen's lines reminded me the most of my mother's. I could see the formal training in both, the light strokes, swift moves that slowed down as the confidence in their line placement grew. I looked at Jurgen's hands, filling in buildings and windows. My mom used to make gingerbread houses, I said. Oh, nice, he said in his lilting Austrian accented English. I instantly felt stupid. I wanted to make him understand. Gingerbread, and that's how I say it with a capital G, is a time, an event, maybe even a place, and at its simplest and purest, a housing project, an inversion of the one in which I grew up in East New York.
I love that story so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
reading it.
Thank you for having me.
Where can people follow you, your writing?
My brand is Stuy Somm, so that's BEDSTUYSOMM.com. That's my website, and you can follow me, Stuy Somm, on Instagram, and that's where I do my writing. I'm currently working on a memoir of food, drinks, and family that this piece will be in, bringing together more of those ideas. Like, there's a piece about cereal, and there's this piece about dating people and their drinks, so things are like coming together. Hopefully that will find its way into the world pretty soon, and I'm so excited to had the chance to sit with you, Rose. It's lovely.
Oh my God, it's wonderful. And what about the Fulton Street Fellowship? Where can people find that?
It's fultonstreetfellowship.org, and it is a really great organization founded by myself and a local wine seller, Chris Leon. And what we do is we raise money to put Black people and people who identify as Black specifically into the wine industry. We do that through education and mentorship. We pay for scholarships to the Institute of Culinary Education's wine program, and we offer them a chance to, connect with people in the industry and, find jobs, find mentorship, and find each other, build a community.
And now the ICC and the ICE, different things?
Yeah, so the ICC, RIP, that school closed in 2020. I know it broke my heart too, but the curriculum lives on through the Institute of Culinary Education, which is located in downtown Manhattan. And you will find actually many of the chefs who worked at ICC there, including Chef Jurgen, who is still today one of my dearest friends.
And curriculum that you, when you were there, had,
absolutely,
that you edited and that
you guys
wrote,
will see my words, my writing. I've worked on the culinary programs, the wine program, the pastry program. So I've worked on lots of different books over the years.
Michele, I didn't even ask you for your local saying.
Oh,
what's a local saying from your life that you want to share?
I was thinking about this. I think I texted you at one point because I'm overthinking it. What are the local sayings? But one of the ones that really sticks out with me in New York that I think I use a lot is "get out of here." Because this is the way you say it. It's like, get out of here. You could say it in different ways and has different meanings. Like, what? Get out of here, or get out of here. You can add intensity. Say fuck out of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It means so many things. It's like, or it's a rejection of something. It's a disbelief. It's just like, oh, get out of it. It's great. What I like too is that you see other communities use it. So I live in East Flatbush now, and I hear Caribbeans use it, and they say, get out of here. You hear the people, Italian Americans use it. Everybody says, get out of here.
Yeah.
It's like bacon, egg, and cheese on a roll. Salt, pepper, no ketchup. It's just one of those things that just comes, and it really has a meaning.
I love this. It's like positive. It can also be like positive disbelief.
Yeah.
Like, I got some really good news for you. You're like, I didn't know you had a piece in the New Yorker. Get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, get out of here.
You got to tell me this shit.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. It's like, get out of here. Fuck out of here.
Brag about that. Brag about that more, please.
I know.
We've been friends for years. I'm like, what about your publications? Oh, just the New Yorker. Yeah.
I know. I am really modest. I am really proud of that piece, though. Yeah. It's called The Christmas Wreath, if you want to check it out in the New Yorker. And it is a true story of the time where my mother hid razor blades in a Christmas wreath to keep people from stealing it off the door.
Oh my God.
And the Gingerbread makes an appearance there. So does my dog. But it's very much about what family is and what it means to build a home.
Thank you for sharing these stories about your mom and your family and your childhood.
Thanks.
Thank you for bringing them to the show.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Super fun.
I'm so glad you're here working in this world. I'm so glad we're friends. And thanks again for coming on the show.
Anytime. You can't get rid of me. I love you.
I love you too. To our listeners, keep an eye out for the bonus episode of Michele's full piece about the Gingerbread House. Wherever you go and whatever you like to drink, always remember to enjoy your life and to never stop learning. Support us on Patreon. Grab the newsletter at mododibere.com and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Modo di Bere to watch the travel show Modo di Bere TV. Music for the show was composed by Ercilia Prosperi for the band Oh. Purchase their music at the link in the notes.